Welcome back to Investment Banking University's Investment Banking course. We are on the second side of the perpetuity, the sell side, and we are particularly dealing with the responsibilities of the investment banker. So now we're talking about a part of the course which is very interesting. It's the investment bank management part of the course, and we're going to be talking about two things. We're going to talk about starting a boutique investment bank and a methodology for doing that. And we're also going to be talking about a methodology for running a boutique investment bank. So since the M&A market is so fragmented in the middle market, it may become necessary for the investment banker to run his own M&A practice. So the first part of firm management for the investment bank is actually building the boutique investment bank. And so I'm using a methodology that I used at AltQuest Group to actually grow and build AltQuest Group itself, and that's at AltQuest, ALTQUEST.com. And it's a middle market boutique investment bank. So at Investment Banking University, we're often asked how to build a boutique investment bank. So we created a methodology for doing so, consistent with that which built AltQuest Group, the middle market boutique investment bank. This methodology is known as the boutique investment bank methodology, which goes as follows, and it's at a high level. So number one, we're going to decide on our investment banking product. Is this going to be M&A, capital raising, growth advisory, or a mix of three of these? At AltQuest Group, we decided to go with all three. We're going to decide, number two, on the size of the market to cover. Are we going to be dealing with public companies, the middle market, lower middle market, or even smaller? At AltQuest Group, we deal primarily in the middle and lower middle market, depending on whether it's a sell-side engagement in the lower middle market most oftentimes, or if it's a buy-side engagement in the middle market or higher. So number three, we're going to decide on industry coverage. AltQuest Group's coverage is broken down between healthcare, manufacturing, software, and business services. And then we're going to actually go into and take a look at the coverage breakdown within each industry and how we built out a taxonomy that further segments the industry into sub-verticals. Number four, we're going to break down the industry into sub-verticals to cover. And then number five, we're going to build in the industry itself, indices for the industry itself, as well as the sub-verticals made up of public comps. Number six, we're going to utilize the coverage and origination methodology to advise targets on their strategic alternatives. And we've already talked about that, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the context of cases. And number seven, we're going to utilize the mandate target matching methodology to match strategic and financial buyers' mandates to targets. Number eight, we're going to gather financials, recast EBITDA, provide evaluation, and generate investment banking deliverables, including adjusted EBITDA, valuation, teaser, SIM, and management presentation. Ultimately, as we go through the M&A process and run it, we're going to do an offer analysis, and then we're ultimately going to aid in the drafting and structuring of a purchase agreement. After that is completed, we're going to then transition to due diligence in the data room. So we, at AltQuest Group, when first getting started, we had to choose our initial coverage groups, and those became manufacturing, software, business services, and healthcare. So we're actually going to take a look at the indices that we built out with AltQuest Group and how we broke that down, and it's very interesting. So after choosing your coverage, the investment banker is then going to build an index for each one of the verticals and sub-verticals made up with the public comps. And the AltQuest Group coverage is broken down in the following manner. For manufacturing, we've broken it down between durable consumer, non-durable consumer, aerospace and defense, building products, industrial, and medical. In terms of software, we've broken it down between traditional software, internet, and software as a service. In terms of business services, we've broken it down between education and training, business process outsourcing, facility services and industrial services, human resources, information services, marketing services, real estate services, IT services, and specialty consulting. In terms of healthcare, we've broken it down between dental product, dental providers, medical devices and products, medical product distribution, specialty providers, pharma services, practice management provider services, and long-term and behavioral care. So now we're actually going to take a look at the public comps that make up the sub-vertical indices. And we're going to take a look at this in a list. We're not necessarily going to read off every one, but we're just going to give you an idea of what this looks like and how this ends up being populated into an Excel spreadsheet with data being pulled and updated from either a paid data source like Capital IQ or FactSet, or just public data sources such as Google Finance or Yahoo Finance. So in terms of manufacturing, in terms of the AltQuest Group Durable Consumer Index, as you can see here, we have a number of different public comps that we run through. For example, you can take a look at Brunswick Corporation, and it shows the ticker symbol and what stock exchange they're actually listed on. For example, this one is the NYSE, and their ticker symbol is BC. Tupperware Brands Corporation, it's on the NYSE, and it's TUP. As we move down to non-durable consumer index, you can actually, there's some very recognizable names there, of course. From Colgate-Palmolive to General Mills to Campbell Soup Company to the Clorox Company, Church & Dwight, Coty, Edgewell Personal Care Company, Avon Products, Interperfumes. And then we can move down to the aerospace and defense, looking at Honeywell International, the Boeing Company. As we look at building products index, we're taking a look at Mohawk Industries, USG Corporation, Armstrong World Industries, Advanced Drainage Systems. As we look at AltQuest Group Industrial Index, we're taking a look at Ingersoll Rand, Parker Hannifin Corporation, Rockwell Automation, Crane Co. Looking at AltQuest Group Medical Index within manufacturing, we're looking at Medtronic, Dentsply, Sirona, Hologic, Abaxis. In terms of software, when looking at traditional software index for AltQuest Group, we're actually looking at Athena Health, Bizarre Voice, Benefit Focus, Calade Software. And then as we look at the Internet Index, we have 1-800-Flowers, 58.com, 8x8, Akami Technologies, Alibaba, Amazon, Baidu. As we get into past that, looking at business services, and within business services, we've broken it down, of course, starting with education and training. So this is the AltQuest Group Education and Training Index. We have Graham Holdings Company, GP Strategies Corp, Pearson, John Wiley & Sons, Capella Education, Bridgepoint Education. Looking at AltQuest Group Business Process Outsourcing, we're looking at Wipro, as well as Cognizant Technology Solutions Corporation. On the AltQuest Group Facility Services and Industrial Services Index, we're looking at Cintas, ABM, SP+, Aramark. Looking at AltQuest Group's Human Resources Index, we've got Robert Half International, Manpower Group. So as you can see, we have a list of public comps that we maintain coverage on within our subvertical of choice within the industry of choice. So we're ultimately tracking changes in the indices themselves to then track EBITDA multiples as well as margins and other variables that we've identified as important. And so this coverage is going to be the basis for providing advice on strategic alternatives to given targets. So that's why we do this. In terms of the AltQuest Group Information Services Index, we're looking at Thomson Reuters, Axiom, Gartner, Alliance Data Systems. In terms of AltQuest Group Real Estate Services Index, we've got CBRE Group, CoStar Group, Jones Lang LaSalle Incorporated. In terms of AltQuest IT Services Index, we're looking at International Business Machines Corporation. Obviously, that's IBM. Accenture, Cognizant Technology Solutions. In terms of AltQuest Group Specialty Consulting, we're looking at CEB, FTI Consulting, Exponent. Now, in terms of healthcare, starting with Dental Products Index, we're looking at Zimmer Biomet Holdings, Dentsply Sirona, Henry Schein, Align Technology. Looking at AltQuest Group Medical Devices and Products Index, we're looking at Medtronic, Abbott Laboratories, Stryker. Moving on to the Medical Product Distribution Index, we're looking at Danaher Corporation, Stryker Corporation, McKesson Corporation, Cardinal Health. In terms of specialty providers, we're looking at Fresenius Medical Care, DaVita Health Healthcare Partners, Mednax, AmSurg Corporation. Looking at Pharma Services Index, we're looking at CVS Health, Express Scripts Holding Company, Perrigo Company. Now on to practice management. We're looking at WellCare Health Plans, Health Equity, Team Health Holdings. Finally, we're looking at Provider Services Index for AltQuest Group. We're looking at Cerner Corporation, Healthcare Services Group, HMS Holdings Corporation. And then finally and lastly, we're looking at long-term and behavioral care index for AltQuest Group. We have National Healthcare Corporation, the Ensign Group, Civitas Solutions. And so when an investment banker then spreads each public comp and the financial data feeds into the median and average for the vertical and subvertical, which is ultimately ends up in the research in the form of an industry report, a newsletter, pitch book, sim of the given of our investment bank for a given target. For investment banks with an equity research department, the financial statement models will then be built for each public comp that is being covered, and consensus EPA data taken from the research reports will be used to establish the value for a public comp. The investment banker ultimately uses the vertical and subvertical indices to perform proprietary research and then develop industry reports and newsletters which aid in coverage and ultimately origination and advisory. So the research will then go into greater detail. The research, which we will go into greater detail later in the book and course, focuses on vertical and subvertical trends in margins, multiples, and M&A. So after establishing one's coverage and then building an index for the vertical and subvertical, as well as establishing relationships with strategic and financial buyers within the vertical and subvertical, the investment banker may begin advising targets on their strategic alternatives using information gleaned from the indices. Regarding the vertical and subvertical indices, we're tracking trends in growth rates, margins, and multiples. So the investment banker takes the index and establishes tiers which turn into peer groups, and this is why we pull public comps to benchmark a target against the comps. And so by comparing a target's level of performance to its peers and the industry in general, the investment banker can determine when it's ideal to exit a business when multiples are strong and when it is not when multiples are weak. This is how investment bankers advise on strategic alternatives. So we've already kind of went into that, talking about tracking trends using the indices, for example, the ones we just talked about for AltQuest Group, to then track trends in growth rates, margins, debt to equity, multiples, and provide advisory based upon that. So this is just an infographic answering the question that we just talked about, how to build a boutique investment bank. And so once again, we're deciding on a mix of investment banking product, which is going to be M&A, capital raising, growth advisory. That's what we started with AltQuest Group. We're going to decide on the size of the market to cover. Is it going to be public companies, middle market, or lower middle market? We're going to decide on industry coverage. AltQuest Group's coverage is broken down between healthcare, manufacturing, software, and business services. We're going to break down this industry into a taxonomy of subverticals. We're then going to build indices for each industry and subverticals made up of public companies. We're going to utilize the coverage and origination methodology, which we already talked about, to advise targets on strategic alternatives. And then we're going to utilize the mandate target matching methodology to match strategic and financial buyers' mandates to targets. And so that's it for this video. We're actually going to get into running the boutique investment bank in the next video.